Gen AI is changing customer experience from reactive to proactive. It's making it very highly personalized and at scale. So what do you think is the biggest business opportunity that this creates for enterprises? And how is it changing your approach to the customer journey?
The only thing that AI has really allowed to happen, which was previously a much more costly thing to happen, is for this to be delivered at scale, right? Is we finally have capabilities that are good enough and are accessible enough so that we can deliver on that promise of a great experience. So when you think of like reactivity and proactivity, the best customer experience is probably one that is proactive, what generative AI is, or what, the next advent of model or technique or data that we use. They're all going to fall into like solving a very, very basic human problem. And that opportunity is going to be there today as it was there 10 years ago. We're going to have, much more natural, much more personalized and effortless interactions than we've ever had, thanks to this technology.
What systems or what processes do you recommend CTOs they implement within the company if they're going to build these AI-driven customer experience solutions?
The first thing with any AI deployment is to not think of these as software that you buy, deploy, and forget about. They have to be continuously monitored, engaged with, and maintained over time. And a big part of just governance on them is being able to make sure that the processes by which you're testing them are actually sophisticated enough and comprehensive enough to be able to validate that, you've done your diligence in minimizing any potential risks. If your business is also trying to be at the forefront of performance, you'll find that building processes for validation, processes for red teaming and evaluation become way, way more important than the actual, tests you run in any given cycle. The habit of testing and validation is what's key.
Welcome to the Tech Transformed podcast, where we have a weekly conversation with people impacting the enterprise tech landscape. My name is Christina Stathopoulos, and I will be your host today. After building out an advanced analytics career in big tech, I am now the founder of Dare to Data, helping individuals and corporations take the next step in their data and AI journey. Today, I am joined by Mike Gozzo, the Chief Product and Technology Officer at Ada. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how customer experience is being completely transformed, the evolving role of human agents amongst all of this, and what the future of AI-driven experience might look like. So welcome to the show, Mike. Before we dive in, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you and your team do over at Ada?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Christina. My name is Mike Gozzo. I run a team of engineers, product managers, designers, ML researchers, pretty much all over the world right now. And we've been, for the better part of a decade, building solutions to automate customer service and turn that from just simple contact deflection to deep resolution and then to really monetize customer journeys that help grow lifetime value. It's interesting. Over the last 10 years, our company's really evolved based on the technology that was prevalent at the time, going from very traditional natural language processing approaches to intent detection and scripted workflows, and then moving in, and we were one of the first companies to introduce fully agentic customer service a few years ago with the advent of large language models that had been tuned to handle use cases like this one. And, sky's the limit now. We just keep on working together with one goal in mind, making sure that we can get our customers to have the most natural, highest quality service experiences through the use of AI. And, our hope is that if we do this right, a lot of companies today are forced and are compelled to compete on the customer experience quality. And unfortunately, this has left a lot of companies kind of out in the cold because there's this interplay between how much great service or how much service costs and the quality of that service. That's kept companies that, want to offer the best prices to their customers kind of in the cold and not able to deliver high service experiences to go along with their products. With AI, we finally can break that equivalency, right? We can stop it from being a really, really expensive proposition to deliver quality service. That can become the norm for all of us. And if we do that right, we're winning.
Fantastic. Well, I think we have a lot to unpack in this conversation. I want to start by zooming out and just looking at the overall landscape. You've mentioned it about you've been in this space for a while now, and you've been evolving very quickly. I mean, before all these, waves of agentic AI and generative AI have come, and customer experience, it's been evolving along the way. You all are at the heart of this. And generative AI is what you mentioned. It's transforming a lot of things now. So I want to focus on that Gen AI is changing customer experience from reactive to proactive. And then as well, it's making it very highly personalized and at scale. So what do you think is the biggest business opportunity that this creates for enterprises? And how is it changing your approach to the customer journey?
I look at all of this not as a business opportunity, because what we're trying to solve here is a problem that has been around for as long as commerce has happened, as long as people have been interacting on something to solve a problem, right? At the end of the day, folks want to buy, transact, work with people that they feel a high degree of trust for, that they can relate their needs to in a really clear way, and where they can achieve their goals and do so in a productive way that's fair for all parties involved. The only thing that AI has really allowed to happen, which was previously a much more costly thing to happen, is for this to be delivered at scale, right? Is we finally have capabilities that are good enough and are accessible enough so that we can deliver on that promise of a great experience. So when you think of like reactivity and proactivity is one of the questions, one of the ways you framed this earlier. The best customer experience is probably one that is proactive, right? It's getting out of the car when you pull up to a Four Seasons and have the person who opens the door for you automatically know your name and welcome you to the property. And it's the first time you've ever set foot in that country, let alone that hotel. So yes, those experiences are really great. All of this technology that we're all building now is to take experiences like that were previously reserved for, the 1% of people that could take advantage of these services and make them commonplace. So when you look at, what generative AI is, or what, the next advent of model or technique or data that we use, they're all going to fall into like solving a very, very basic human problem. And that opportunity is going to be there today as it was there 10 years ago. And it's going to be there, probably 25, 50 years from now. The only difference is going to be the bar for what we consider a great experience is going to have changed so much. And if I look at the trend of where it's going, I think we're going to have, much more natural, much more personalized and effortless interactions than we've ever had, thanks to this technology.
I like how you start with the problem. I worked at Waze previously, and one of the co-founders wrote a book. He has this message that he always says, which is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. So it's good that you're starting off with the problem.
And if you look at Ada's journey, right, as I said, we started off with a version, I won't say a version of AI, but a technique in artificial intelligence that's, sure has been a precursor to a lot of the work on Gen AI now and how those systems work. But we've had to reinvent the company about 3 times in its journey as the underlying technology has changed. You don't get to navigate change like that without falling into obsolescence unless you're obsessed with that problem, because you have to be ready to throw out all the tech, no matter how good it is, no matter how much revenue is behind it. You got to be ready to burn it all and move to what's going to be the right thing for your customers.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. If you're falling in love with the problem, you're staying focused on the problem. It doesn't matter what you need to do to redo everything. Like you said, you've had to just re-transform the company over and over because you're always going back to the heart of the company, which is solving that problem. Now, we're talking about customer journey and everything happening with generative AI. We all know that the power of generative AI relies on quality data. And I'm a data gal, so I want to talk about the data. Managing it is a huge challenge. What do you think are the main operational challenges you're seeing that CTOs are encountering when they're trying to manage what end up being these vast amounts of often very siloed customer data that you need to be able to scale accurate models?
A lot of technologists look at this from the outside, particularly if they're not AI practitioners, and think that they require huge data lakes in order to be able to do anything. I think data is very useful for personalization. It's very useful as context brought into these systems. And we should think about governance of that context and how to bring it in. But at the model layer, I'd call it the quality of intelligence and inference. It's actually not about data scale at all. You look at the techniques for shifting a model so that it can behave more like the ideal solution that you want. We're talking about, needing anywhere between 50 and 500 samples of data. And that's all that it's going to take. And that's something that really like someone can fit on an Excel spreadsheet in many cases to be able to map out what their trying to do and get the performance from the system that they need. So what I like to tell people who are like concerned about the data moat that's required and kind of the effort coming in here, much more value lies in not the data that you've captured, but on the understanding that you have in your business of how it runs, how it operates, and the people that are actually doing the tasks that you're trying to automate. Data alone doesn't provide you the signal to capture that expertise on the ground of what people are doing and thinking. A good example here is if you look in the customer service world and you look at transcripts of interactions, say phone calls that come into a contact center. If you look at that data, you're going to see a lot of very pleasant conversations where a human agent picks up the phone, answers a question, and hangs up. What you're not going to see is what happened in between the human agent getting the phone call and all the work they did to touch the right system, look up the right information, authenticate the customer to solve the problem. There's a very, very big difference between what is said and what is communicated, and it typically looks like a data sample, to what is actually done and the work that someone's doing behind the scenes. And the data that people collect usually are those call transcripts. They're not the work that the agent is doing on the system. So they have limited utility. So a lot of it really comes down to, well, stop trying to build a data vacuum to capture everything. Really bring the people into your AI initiative who are close to the problem, have the context of how that works, and can really think about training the AI agent that you're developing, no matter the use case, if it's service or otherwise. They can really think about training that AI agent with the same kinds of human insight that they would use when they're training a new employee who they're bringing on to do that task. And that's really the core of this. So I really don't think that a lot of CTOs should be focused on their, call it, data moat at this stage until they want to personalize further.
Okay, this is an interesting perspective. So you're saying it's not just about, of course, quality data is important, and less so, you're focused much less so on like big data. It's more small quality data. But most importantly is the human element, is what you're saying, when we get into the agentic AI use cases, right?
I mean, we're talking really about the models that we have in practice now, right? If we look at, the frontier models, both open and closed, those have soaked up most of the data on the internet in order to be trained on, right? And that just gives them their amazing ability to run inference on language and so on and so forth. But I think the vastness of their training data also means that their output is going to be something that has been tuned to focus on general purpose assistant use cases. So the goal in customizing one of these models becomes, well, how do you shift how it's tuned slightly in order to fit your use case, whether it's, a specific format of output you need or spicing towards a certain set of principles that might not be well represented in the original training data because it's been generalized. So to do that, you don't need mountains, right? You need to be very, very good about, quality of two things: quality of the specific inputs you're bringing in to fine tune, and you need to think really strongly about your evals or your test framework that you're using to assess whether or not you're moving in the right direction. Effort invested into those two areas is going to pay off way more than, indiscriminate data capture, even if it is of high quality. For most companies that are customizing models, right? It's a different ballgame if we say we're going to go out and build, proprietary first party models right now. But I think that's out of reach for most companies unless they're a research lab, because the amount that they're going to spend to do that, they'll probably still have a model that's less performant than a customized version of one of the open models.
Yeah, of course. That makes a lot of sense. Now, and you had mentioned, you made a comment earlier about, I believe it was governance and these types of things, security. So I do want to talk a little bit about transitioning from a successful AI pilot within the company to a dependable solution. I think that's a quite a challenge. Like, that's something big that we need to come over, and we need to do so responsibly. So let's talk a little bit about that. What systems or what processes do you recommend CTOs they have in place or they implement within the company if they're going to build these AI-driven customer experience solutions, but they're going to comply with security and quality governance standards?
I mean, I think the first thing with any AI deployment is to not think of these as software that you buy, deploy, and forget about. They have to be continuously monitored, engaged with, and maintained over time. And a big part of just governance on them is being able to make sure that the processes by which you're testing them are actually sophisticated enough and comprehensive enough to be able to validate that, you've done your diligence in minimizing any potential risks. There's, an advent of companies now that have come up trying to help businesses certify or underwrite the risk related to agentic AI development. There's one that's got a great name called AIUC, the AI Underwriting Company. They're well funded. They've, built out really, really great and open sets of tests and procedures to certify that AI technology that's being deployed is resilient to most of the common risks that we would find. And I think working with a company like this that, truly understands how these systems are architected and can help you diligence away some of the risk that you would be exposing yourself to is extremely important. And what's interesting about, this approach is it isn't just a fire and forget, do it once. These are tests that have to be performed quarterly or yearly, depending on the pace of updates on the system, because the underlying models are changing in their capabilities at breakneck speed. So it's really difficult to certify anything with a long-term view in mind if that company and if your business is also trying to be at the forefront of performance. You'll find that building processes for validation, processes for red teaming and evaluation become way, way more important than the actual, tests you run in any given cycle. The habit of testing and validation is what's key.
Okay, good advice. I want to move back to the human element. We've already talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to tackle it from a different perspective. Once we have all these pieces in place, the focus really shifts from how people and AI can work together, I think, on a day-to-day basis. Some say that AI can automate up to maybe 80% of these routine interactions successfully. How do you think of the role of the human service agent changes then? From your perspective as a technology leadership standpoint, what new tools, what new skills are necessary to support good, effective collaboration between humans and AI within this customer experience journey?
Yeah, I think it's not really just a customer experience thing. I think this is a broad concern, but what's really going to be rewarded across all professions is the ability to communicate and manage, much more so than the ability to do a task efficiently. Whether you're a developer who is using an AI agent to help them write code and define the application they're building, or you're a customer service agent who is now looking to drive automation to get things done, you have to shift how you're approaching work to be one which is primarily delegation and collaboration as opposed to just execution. And that's a shift that's going to be tough for a lot of people to go through. I know my own journey as a manager, as I learned to work with people, I had to, and I still do often struggle with, well, what's the right amount of work that I do myself versus how do I, communicate a task so that others can take it and do it successfully. I think in many cases, we're going to find these agentic systems are extremely capable of doing the job if they have the context needed to perform it. And that really puts the onus on managers of the system. So you look at what role are humans going to play in. I think we're going to have a management task here that is gargantuan and really difficult to get our heads around. And we'll have to adapt how we train people and how we teach our children to be able to do that.
I hear a lot the role of the orchestrator. I think like the AI orchestrator and just this idea of an orchestrator managing teams of not just humans, but also AI, now everybody together. And like you said, it takes practice to learn how to manage, how to delegate. Now, we've been talking a lot about the recent developments in generative AI and large language models, even agentic AI most recently. Things have moved very, very fast in just a few years. You all have stayed on top of it, even ahead of everyone else, I think. But talking about how quickly this has advanced in just a few years, I think it raises a bigger question, which is where are we going next? Where can this go? So beyond just ticket resolution, what is the ultimate goal for AI in customer experience? In the next 3 to 5 years, how do you envision AI growing
And
within
I
the
would say it's even stronger. It's happening now. It's not waiting for 3 to 5 years. Our customers that are at the forefront of things have two things are true of our customers who are most successful and the ones that are still working to get there. One is that their AI agents have surpassed human performance, and this can't be understated enough. We have a good selection of customers now who are, after they've deployed ADA and tuned it and work with it and integrate into their processes, they are providing higher quality customer service experiences as denoted by the satisfaction surveys that their customers fill out after interaction. So that their customers prefer working with their AI. and they're able to save dramatic amounts of money because the AI is simply resolving the problem. What I mean here concretely is, resolving will definitively resolve over 70% of customer service inquiries. And of all the inquiries that it handles, both the resolved and unresolved, the satisfactions of those customers is north of 80%, which means that, over 80% of these customers, in some cases 90% plus, walk away saying that was really satisfying and I'm happy that I went through that experience. I think that's the first kind of baseline point on this. The other thing beyond performance is, well, what happens when you're able to provide a great customer experience that's automated, that's fast, that's inexpensive to run? Then companies start saying, well, for the customers that experience that, what is the impact on their interaction with my business as a whole? And that's usually measured by customer lifetime value. So our most successful customers, they're not talking to us about resolution rates. They're not talking to us about the impact on their BPOs and their outsourcing to contact center agents. They're strategizing, well, how do I make these AI journeys part of what grows my business, right? How does it change my retention? How does it change my top line? What can we do now that we have these tools in terms of experience design that we couldn't do before? And that's where things get really exciting, because you're looking at people like reimagine their business, reimagine the way they show up for their customers, because they've been able to figure out how do they deliver high quality AI customer experience. So I think that the future will be that. Well, if the last year is predictive of anything in the future, we're going to see an increasing number, if not all of our customers, be able to deliver better than human customer service. And as that happens, we're going to be pulled more and more in driving up lifetime value and in changing the way that businesses and consumers interact.
That's interesting, and it makes a lot of sense, actually. Like you said, it's not something that's just going to happen in 3 to 5 years from now. This is already in motion. It's happening now, and it's changing very fast. Now, we've talked about a lot of different things in the conversation today. As we're coming to a close, I have one last question for you, and it's a tough one because I'm going to ask you to summarize one key takeaway in 60 seconds from our conversation today for any CTOs, CIOs that are tuning in. What would you share with them? One takeaway. What would it be and why?
It's about the people. At the end of the day, the people on your team know how to make AI successful, right? So capture their insight. Don't look at this as a technology project. Don't look at this as technology introduction. Look at it as an opportunity to capture knowledge, capture thinking from the people at your business that run your operations today, and bring them into the fold and make sure that your operational leaders who are being asked to collaborate with AI are really able to encode their knowledge and work with these systems to make it successful. The technologist will not rule this next decade, this next phase towards agentic AI. This is all about business level leaders and experts that do the heavy lifting. They're the ones who are going to make this successful or not.
Okay. So at the heart of the age of generative AI, agentic AI, still are humans, right?
Mm-hmm. Not the technologists, not the nerds. It's going to be folks in operations to make the difference.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you coming on. Also, thank you to everyone who has tuned in today. We hope you took a lot away from today's podcast. For further information on what we've talked about, please head on over to ada.cx. It's ada.cx. We'll be back next week with another episode in our podcast series. Until then, make sure you subscribe to this podcast on all major platforms and follow the conversation on our socials at EM360 Tech on X and LinkedIn. And for more great daily content, head on over to em360tech.com.